Well, good afternoon, everyone. The H1B Guy here. And today, the H1B Guy live, April 27th, 2022. Taking a look at the June Visa Bulletin for a sneak peek, more H1B lottery data, and taking your questions and comments. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube and like this video so that I can continue to produce more content like this for you. I also wanted to mention the H1B Guy offers a variety of consulting services. I help businesses and individuals solve complex work authorization issues in the recruitment process while bringing awareness to employment based immigration benefits. If I can help you, please reach out. I'd love to hear how. And you can book an appointment directly with me via the h1bguy.com. Today's live stream is brought to you by Syndesis and Path to Canada, the ideal plan B for high skilled immigrants currently located in the US whose status may be uncertain, by PERM-ads.com, the industry leader in providing a seamless experience for employers and immigration attorneys navigating the complex PERM recruitment ad phase of the labor certification process, and by Mob Squad. Are you a technology professional facing U.S. work visa challenges? If your OPT visa is about to expire and you were not selected in the recent H1B lottery, our partner Mob Squad has the solution. Join the squad. Well, thanks again to everyone who's taken time to jump in here this afternoon. It's hard to believe we are almost to the beginning of May. Literally, we are 26 days into the portal for the H1B lottery being open, and that portal meaning the paper application portal, the 90-day period, if you will. There's been a lot of news coverage around the amount of registrations, electronic registrations that were received surrounding this year's lottery. The last several weeks, I've covered a lot of content and talked about a lot of data surrounding the H1B lottery, but there's still some more information that continues to come out. And as I continue to kind of look at some of the ratios and percentages, there's a few more things that I wanted to talk about here this afternoon as we look into some of this lottery data. Of course, it's been widely publicized that 483,927 applications were received for fiscal year 2023, and that USCIS subsequently selected 127,600 registrations. But I think the thing that I found interesting is last year, if we start to compare some of the data from last year to some of the data that we see already in place for this year, and that is last year in that first selection. So this is for fiscal year 2023. For that first selection, there were 87,500 registrations that were selected. And of course, it's widely publicized. 70% application rate from that 87,500 selections. But I think the interesting thing is we look at year over year, right? And we start to calculate, what does this year over year data mean? And the year over year data shows that registration selections for this year were 57% higher. So that means that literally USCIS selected 40,100 registrations more this year for fiscal year 2023. The other thing that I think was really interesting is we start to look at the difference, right? The difference, the increase, the significant increase that we saw. And again, for fiscal year 2022, there were 308,613 total registrations. And of course, as I mentioned, USCIS selected 87,500 in that first selection period. But the difference, year over year increase, was 175,314 total applications. And if we go back and look at the year over year increases from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2022, those were around 33,000 plus increase in year over year. But this year we saw a significant jump. And last week during the live stream, I alluded to many things, of which, I alluded to the fact that a half a million really applications were received, applications, registrations, however you want to word it. Um, and we look at the selection behind that. And I speculated about the increase of the non-refundable fee, increasing that fee to maybe even $100 per individual, and how that would create a lot of revenue in place. But I think when you start to peel back some of these probabilities of selection, and you start to look at the advanced degree category, you look at the totality of literally 127,600 out of 483,927, roughly 26% when we look at the 85,000 total available, right? Um, but also, when you start to peel back the percentages, 31% of those being in the advanced degree category, it really means that individuals that came to the US to get a master's degree or higher had a 13% probability of being selected. And I think that's the thing when you start to look at now the diminishing returns. And those diminishing returns are not only for the individual, but they're also for the employer. Yeah, a $10 non-refundable fee, but very low probability, and it's creating a lot of issues. And what are some of the causes of that? Of course, we've talked about the duplicate or double registrations, right? An individual who has multiple employers put their name in as a registration. But if I'm an individual and I'm going, my employer only has a 13% probability or a 20% probability, I'm going to seek other avenues of organizations that are willing to pay that $10 non-refundable fee. And this just leads down the path of what are we to expect going forward. I continue to get asked over and over about the possibility of there being a second H1B lottery or selection held this year, even with the amount of registrations that were selected for this year being, 127,600 for 85,000 slots. And I still believe that there will probably be around a 60% application rate out of these 127,600 slots. And so that leads me to believe that anywhere between 5 to 15,000, again, that's a pretty broad range, but I think 5 to 15,000 is a good estimate of once the 90-day period is up at June 30th, USCIS will then have a good calculation of the application rate and be able then to determine whether or not a second lottery would be feasible. Now, over the last several weeks, I've been talking about July 22nd as kind of the ideal benchmark date. I think if a second selection of registrations were to be held, it'd be somewhere around or after July 22nd. Could be as early as that or as late as the 29th, or even moving into that first week of August, which would be somewhere around, I believe, August 5th or 6th. Let me just check really quickly. Yeah, August 5th, actually. So those are kind of the three consecutive Fridays, starting with July 22nd, July 29th, August 5th. So if you're wondering, like, hey, I could possibly be in a cap gap scenario, my OPT or my OPT STEM is expiring, mid July or mid June. What do I do? Well, unfortunately, you need to start to begin making second plans, because there's a lot of rumors out there about, because of how many registrations were selected here, they feel like the possibility of a second lottery has been diminished. I still am fairly confident that a second lottery will happen. I just feel like, because of the number of allocations that are given annually, they have to all be issued out. So I still think that, going back to that point, it leads me to believe that somewhere around the July 22nd through August 5th, a second lottery, second selection will be held. And then that would give individuals, once that does happen, depending on when it happens, um, 90 days from that point. So if we were to say, kind of looking through it, August 1st is a Monday, that would lead me to believe then, most likely somewhere around the beginning of November, the 90-day period would be up, and we'd begin to receive notifications of a finalization. I don't think we'll see a third lottery this year. I think last year was, as we've talked about, a bit of an anomaly and maybe unprecedented. But I do believe that one of the cause and effects of moving to this electronic registration has lent itself to there being a second lottery that most likely will be held, just because of the application rates, right? Even if they select this 127,600, the odds are that they're not going to receive 100% applications. In fact, the USCIS is betting on at least a 60%, 66% application response. So again, just to do a quick recap, the number of registrations that were selected this year were 57% higher than last year. Um, an increase was also a registration increase of 175,314 registrations year over year. So this thing is heading to well over 500,000 next year. I think that unless something changes, we're going to continue to see this occur, because individuals realize I have a very low probability and I need to put as many opportunities out there to be selected as possible. Wanted to ask you, if you haven't already, to please like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, and click the bell for notifications, so that you're notified anytime we go live, like we have here today on April the 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern. If you have questions or comments, please post those in the chat. I definitely would like to spend the last 15-20 minutes of today's stream interacting and answering your questions and comments. So please post those in the chat. We'll get to all of those. I know a lot of you have a lot of questions surrounding what the next few Visa bulletins are going to look like. So I'd love to talk about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think about some of this H1B lottery data as we continue to work our way through this. If you're looking for ways that you can support the H1B Guy platform, you can do so currently through the super chat function here on YouTube. If you're watching or listening to this at a later date, there are other manners to which you can support the H1B Guy platform. buymeacoffee.com/the H1B Guy. Or also in the video description here on YouTube, there are other means to help produce content that goes out onto the H1B Guy platform. Really appreciate all those who have taken time to support me in the past. And everyone who joins me during these live streams. These have become fairly weekly here. And I think we're building a really good community of questions and comments as it relates to discussion points surrounding reform within the H-1B visa, within the employment-based preferences, the green card backlog. Talking about a lot of the variety of issues going on. Of course, it's been widely discussed, but there are several different pieces of legislation currently in various phases, if you will, within the House and the Senate, discussing or addressing immigration reform and looking to create changes surrounding the Immigration and Nationality Act. So a lot of moving parts going on here, but of course the Visa Bulletin continues to dominate, and it continues to dominate because of the growing backlog. It continues to dominate the conversation because of the root cause, the why behind it, right? And a lot of that goes back to that INA, which was put in place in 1990. As we start to look at what that means, we're talking about 32 years roughly. And it's just time. It's time for change. It's time for reform. It's time for beneficial reform, not only for high skilled immigrants, but also for American workers. And it's something that we talk about a lot. Like I think there's a lot of lost conversations out there. And earlier last week, or in the H1B Guy news last week for April 22nd, I talked about the fact that there are 11 million currently open jobs in this country, and over 2 million of which are in tech. And there's no doubt that there's a shortage, but there's also no doubt that there's a skill gap, right? And so a lot of times we talk about, well, what are the benefits of this skill gap? And the benefits are that there are positions that go unfilled. And in order for us to fill those positions, we have to do so either by a reskill or by immigration. And what we've seen, if we go back to a lot of the restrictive nature of our high skilled immigration laws that we have and pathways to permanent residency, it's opened doors and avenues for countries like Canada and Australia and the UK and even Germany and Dubai and several others that have come in now and have become just as attractive a destination, if not more, because of the welcoming nature and less restrictive nature for high skilled immigrants. And so that's why the Visa Bulletin continues to remain a very popular topic of discussion. It's a very contentious conversation that a lot of individuals, try to ignore and don't want to follow. But unfortunately, its impact is far reaching, and it's not just individuals from India, but individuals from China, individuals from Mexico and the Philippines and El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. We talk about their employment based preferences and categories, specifically, generally in that EB4 for some of the South American countries. For a long time, the Philippines showed up in employment based uh, dates within the Visa Bulletin. So, again, a lot of it goes back to what I was alluding to earlier, and that's the root cause, right? The 7% cap on employment based preferences out of the 140,000 green cards that are issued annually in employment based that are allocated. So we start to look at what does that mean, and a lot of that is because, and you'll see later this week, but 75% of all H1Bs are generally individuals of Indian origin. And then another, I'd say 10% or so are individuals from China. So then when we start to look at, you have two countries that are roughly 85 to 90% of the overall H1B allocation annually, you begin to look at and see, um, why this backlog has continued to grow. A lot of it has to do with the processing delays that we've been talking about very widely as well. But ultimately, the advancement of these bulletin dates that we saw for EB3 and what we're seeing for EB2 this year, I think a lot of us realize is simply a band-aid and a little bit of a mirage. I think you hear the growing murmurs of what is October 2022's bulletin going to look like. A lot of you out there feel like there's going to be a significant retrogression that occurs, if not in October or November of 2022. And when we look at what some of the retrogression that happened in India EB3, China EB3, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras EB4, we saw anywhere between 600 to 700 days of retrogression. So that's 2 years roughly, if not more, that has a lot of us on high alert. And as I've talked about, USCIS continues to accept dates of filing for the Visa Bulletin, which tells me they want to try to get as many individuals documentarily qualified as possible before the end of this fiscal year. So we're going to continue to monitor this very closely. But if you have questions or comments that you would like for me to address concerning, the Visa Bulletin or your current priority dates, and when I think that those dates may be possible, please post those in the chat. I'll love to get to those. But I want to provide some context around some of the sneak peek for June, and ultimately, I wanted to look at some of the forward movement that we've seen that's occurred since January in EB2, primarily for India as well as some for China. But be on the lookout on Monday, this coming up Monday, May 2nd. I will be putting out the H1B Guy forecast, June 2022 Visa Bulletin employment based predictions. But right now, what I wanted to do is give you some insight as to some of the reasoning behind how I come up with some of the movement and looking at some of the trends that we've seen going back to January, which ultimately June will be 6 months of the 6 month bulletin, just for the calendar year, not the fiscal year. So January 2022, in EB2 for final action date saw 68 days of forward movement and month over month from December for India and 21 days for China. There was no forward movement for January 2022 EB2 dates of filing in either India or China. Moving on to February for EB2 for final action dates for India, we saw 177 days of forward movement, and for China, we saw 38 days of forward movement. And then for the February 2022 in EB2 for dates of filing, we saw 55 days of forward movement in India, but no forward movement in China. So again, you're seeing some of the trends here, which is no forward movement in dates of filing, 55 days of forward movement in India specifically. A pretty significant leap happened in February for India EB2, but only about a month or so plus for China. So moving on to March for final action dates for EB2 for India, we saw 128 days of forward movement. So literally in February and March, there was almost 9 months of forward movement total. But there was no forward movement for dates of filing at all for India or China. And of course, in final action for China, there was no forward movement for March either. So now we move into April where things got really interesting in India EB2. And a lot of this is a pattern that we saw where USCIS was on record talking about, requesting an exemption waiver of moving from EB3 back to EB2. And in April, for final action dates for Indian EB2, we saw 68 days of forward movement. And then in the dates of filing, this is where we saw the significant leap, which was a whole year, 365 days of forward movement and dates of filing for April. There was no forward movement for China in EB2 for either final action or dates of filing. So we've seen the China movement really screech to a halt here all throughout 2022, the calendar year, with really only 59 days of total forward movement since January for China in EB2. But the 365 days of forward movement and dates of filing for India and EB2 for April's 2022 Visa Bulletin really caught me off guard. Was like not expecting that much of a significant push. But if we start to look back at some of the trends, we saw some significant movement very similar to this in 2021. So let's move in then to the May Visa Bulletin, where in EB2 for final action dates for India, we saw 55 days of forward movement. And for dates of filing, we saw 3 months, 91 days of forward movement. So let's look at these trends then for dates of filing. No movement in January, 55 days in February, no movement in March, 365 days in April, and then another 91 days in May. Of course, in EB2, it's been fairly consistent. There's been good movement, 68 days in January, 177 days in February, 120 days in March, 68 days in April, and 55 days in May. So I think this leads me to believe that if you kind of look at some of the trends that have been going on here, it really is apparent that in EB2, these dates are going to continue to move in a couple month increments. And I think that kind of goes without saying for any of you who have been tracking this, that I think we'll continue to see 2 to 3 months of forward movement for final action for India EB2. The question is for China and EB2, when are we going to see forward movement again for China and EB2? And to me, that really has been an anomaly. I still expect to see some sort of forward movement for China in EB2 for final action and even dates of filing before the end of the fiscal year. I just don't know whether that's going to occur in June, July, August, or even maybe September. But moving on to the dates of filing, right? And we start to look at, okay, No movement in January, 2 months of movement in February, no movement in March, a year in April, and 3 months in May. And I still believe that based on um, this huge push, this significant increase, this visibility that USCIS is giving around the processing of the I-485s, I think we'll continue to see a push to increase dates of filing. I think the dates of filing will continue to increase anywhere between a month to 3 months. I just, as of right now, I um, have not come to a final decision on where I believe that India EB2 dates of filing will be. But I do believe we'll continue to see movement. I think when we look at the trends for EB3, though, those trends show me that there is not going to be any movement for the foreseeable future. Foreseeable future meaning over the next few months as we move into the last quarter, which would be July, August, and September, Q4 for fiscal year 2022 for USCIS. So we'll continue to monitor and track these very closely. Of course, as I said on Monday, I'll be putting out the H1B Guy forecasts, June 2022 Visa Bulletin employment-based predictions. But what do you guys think? Are you thinking there's going to be some similar movement as I've been discussing here? It sure seems to be all over the place. I will say if I'm sitting at a 2015 date, maybe in mid 2015. I'm really anxious to see what happens over June and July here, and if that means good news for me heading into August or September, with a lot of the murmurs and rumors circling around the possibility of retrogression occurring as early as October of 2022. Just wanted to ask you again, if you haven't already, please like this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube and click the bell for notifications. If you're looking for ways you can support the H1B Guy platform, you can do so through the super chat function currently here on YouTube. Also at buymeacoffee.com/the H1B Guy. If you're watching or listening to this at a later date, would appreciate you taking time to hit that like and support the H1B Guy platform. Gonna go ahead and take some time now to jump into the questions and comments that I've received so far. And as we go through this, please feel free to drop other questions or comments here in the chat, and I will get to them as time permits here over the next 15 minutes or so. So the first question I got was from KKR, and it says, how far do I think dates will move for dates of filing for India EB2? And I guess if that question is around June Visa Bulletin, as of right now, I'm thinking that those dates could move anywhere between, as I said, 30 days to 90 days, right? And we're looking at what, December 2014 right now. So again, I think it could be anywhere as little as January 2015, possibly all the way to February or March of 2015. And the reason why I say that is I really believe USCIS wants to advance these dates of filing as far into 2015 as they can. Excuse me, and they'll continue to accept the dates of filing all the way through the rest of the fiscal year in order to get as many individuals as they can documentarily qualified, meaning adjustment of status has been filed under dates of filing. Okay, so great question there, KKR. Really appreciate you taking the time to join me here this afternoon. RRH asks, do you think EB cases transferred from Texas and Nebraska service centers to NBC will be processed before the end of the fiscal year? Yeah, the push is on, right? I mean, I think anytime you hear the press get an opportunity to speak with the director of USCIS or Jadu, you always hear an emphasis on the amount of cases that they've been processing in the beginning of the fiscal year and in Q2 as well. Of course, the visibility is here, right? We look at the thousands and thousands of spillover green cards that employment-based green cards that went to waste because of lack of processing capabilities within USCIS walls. So yeah, I think there's a possibility. The question becomes, what does that mean for your actual green card, right? Many individuals in your case have received an EAD with advanced parole because their I-45 has been pending for more than 180 days. But I'm hopeful. We've talked about the Texas and Nebraska service centers a good bit. Um, you don't have to go very far to look on Google and look at the reviews for each of these individual locations and understand that there is a cultural issue that's stemming here internally. And I'd really like to give the USCIS director Urjadu a benefit of the doubt that she's had a very difficult job over the last year and cleaning up this toxic culture that existed internally within U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. But great question. I'm hopeful for you that it does happen. But let's continue to monitor it and please keep me posted. Hey Lagar, how are you? Will there be a second H1B draw or even third? If yes, when do you think it will be announced? Yeah, I've talked about this a good bit, Lagar. I did cover it early in today's live stream, but just to give you a quick recap of where I'm at on this, I still really am in significant um, favor of going on record, and I feel like there's still a very high probability of a second lottery will be held this year. I just feel like even if 60% of the 127 respond to their selection this year, you're still going to have anywhere between 5 to 15,000 H1Bs that still will need to be allocated. And that's where that subsequent second lottery will occur. I think this was one of the unforeseen patterns that USCIS wasn't really prepared for when they implemented the electronic registration process back for the first time in March of 2020. But I do believe if you want a time frame, I'd say as early as July 22nd um, through August 5th. And if it doesn't happen between those 3 weeks, then I would be fairly confident in saying that the possibility of it happening would significantly diminish. But I still am very confident in going on record and saying that I do believe there'll be a second lottery held, and I believe that I would be anywhere between July 22nd through August 5th. Hey, Shirag, how are you? How much EB2 India would move forward by next year? I joined late. Unsure if you already answered it. Yeah, I briefly covered it for a few minutes here. I think that the thing that I feel confident in saying right now, Shirag, is it feels like to me that for final action specifically, um, they're going to continue to advance the dates in roughly 2 month increments. So that could be anywhere between 55 to 61, 62 days, depending on the month. Um, and I also feel like when it comes down to dates of filing, it really feels like to me they want to advance the EB2 dates of filing for India as far into 2015 as they can before the end of the fiscal year. So I believe that we'll continue to see dates of filing advance really incrementally over June, July, August, September, anywhere between those 30 to 90-day marks. I just am unsure because that whole year really threw me off in some of my calculations and how I go about coming up with my predictions. But I also feel confident in kind of reading between the lines and saying that it just feels like to me that 60 days is kind of the right number for both final action and dates of filing to continue to be advanced through September's bulletin. So, again, if we want to look at that and say, well, what does that mean then? For dates of filing, I believe if they do continue to do the 60-90, you could see India EB2 dates of filing advance as far as maybe December 2015 by September. But that also leads us to believe that retrogression is imminent as early as October. So I hope that answers your question, Sharad. Thanks for taking time to join my stream here this afternoon. Really appreciate your support. Hey Adarsh, how are you? I lost my original passport after my H1B lottery selection. So will the new passport ID number being issued is different? Will that cause any issue in filing application with USCIS? No, it shouldn't, because literally you're submitting a full formal paper petition, which includes copies of your new passport. So I would make sure, I'm assuming that you've already gotten or applied for the renewal or submitted a request for the lost passport, and once you have that new one, the good news is you still have roughly 60 days to get your paper application in with USCIS, so you do have some time. I definitely understand why this would cause some concern and anxiety for you, but I don't believe or foresee that that would create any issues for you going forward. Um, but keep me posted. I'd love to know how it works out for you, and really appreciate you taking the time to join the stream here today, Adarsh. Thank you. Hey Wei, how are you? Thank you for joining again, as you always do. Really appreciate your continued and ongoing support. Do I think EB1 for China will stay current for the rest of the year and beyond? Yeah, I do. I think EB1, very clearly, while I continue to do predictions on it, I've gotten some feedback that why do I continue to predict EB1 when they continue to remain current? Well, those individuals forget that as recent as February, March of last year, EB1 dates were not current. So yeah, I do expect them to remain current. Expect them to remain current into the foreseeable future. That means through the rest of this year and definitely well into next year. I don't see the number demand in EB1 to be as great, based on some of the data and some of the reports that I've been looking at. So I do expect EB1 to remain current for China, for India, and then for rest of the world as well. Good for now and well into next year. But thank you for your continued support, Way. I really appreciate it. Just wanted to ask you again, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. Click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we go live, like we have here today on April 27th, 2022 at 2 p.m. Eastern. Want to thank everyone who's taken time to drop a question or comment in the chat. I do have time for a few more questions and comments, so I'm going to continue to go through those. If you're looking for ways to support the H1B Guy platform, you can do so through the super chat function here on YouTube, and also at buymeacoffee.com/the H1B Guy. Hey, Tony, how are you? Any chance for EB2 March 2017? Yeah, Tony, I'd say July if you're asking for dates of filing. Okay. I think July is a good number for you. July 1 as of right now. I don't foresee dates of filing for India EB2 to advance past March 1st, 2015. I think that would be the maximum forward movement that we'd see as of right now, but we'll continue to monitor this for you, Tony. But yeah, if I'm you, I'm thinking July looks really good to me right now. But we'll see what June looks like, and really anything could happen. Definitely, you're seeing a lot of emphasis from USCIS to advance these EB2 dates, both dates of filing and final action. But again, if I kind of stick with what I said, which is anywhere between 30 to 90 days, that put us January to March 1st. So I don't think you'll see your date yet, but I think you'll see that in July. Hey, nice Cindy songs. How are you? Do I think October 2014 India EB2 will be current and final action dates by the end of this fiscal year? Well, we have to think about final action dates in 6 to 12-month increments of dates of filing. So if we go by that, right, that means that December 2014 is current in dates of filing for India EB2 as of right now. Of course, 6 months from now, is October or November. And that's when we are hearing these murmurs of possible retrogression. If you were looking for a possibility or a percentage of probability, I'd say you probably have about a 25% chance that in September's Visa Bulletin that October 2014 for final action would be current. So yeah, I think it's possible by the very end of the fiscal year. But again, let's keep track on what happens with the dates of filing over the next couple of months, and I think that that will give us some more insight for you. But right now, if I'm you, yes, I think it is a possibility for final action for you by the end of the year, even though I'm breaking that 6 to 12 month rule from the dates of filing. Hey Vikrant, how are you? Is it possible to get GC for EB2 India for priority date of February 1st, 2015 and current year? Yeah, honestly, Vikrant, if I'm you right now, I'm getting all of my documents in order because I do believe you have a very high possibility of a February 1st, 2015 date as early as this June Visa Bulletin. So please continue to monitor it. And, I'll be putting out my forecast on Monday, but I think there's a very high probability for you for dates of filing to be current in this upcoming June Visa Bulletin, if not possibly the July Visa Bulletin. Hey Divya, how are you? Will EB3 India move forward in 2022? No, unfortunately, I don't think it will. I hate to be the bearer of bad news for you, but we've just not seen any movement at all in India EB3 for final action or dates of filing since the retrogression that occurred in November. And I think that that'll continue to be the same situation going forward. Hey Wahid, do I see any changes for H4 kids age out rule? I absolutely do. I think the America's Children's Act has a very high probability of passing. I think you see a lot of bipartisan support for it, and if it's not that piece of legislation as a standalone, I think you'll see it as a bigger part of immigration reform. And also, we're still holding out hope of the possibility of there being executive action surrounding locking the dates and all of the CSPA and everything that associates with that. But yeah, we're going to continue to talk about this and champion this cause here on this platform. And it's not just for H4 kids, it's also for E2 dependents as well, Wahid, which I think makes this whole documented dreamer scenario much bigger than just H1B stuck in the backlog. So I do think that it has a very high possibility of sometime in the next year. I'd say by the end of next year, 2023, I think that we'll see that age out. There will be protections for documented dreamers from aging out. And last question of the day comes from Nur. Can we expect January 2015 filing dates and EB2 June Visa Bulletin? I think so, Nur. If it's not January 1st, 2015, which would be very disappointing to you, again, I think February or March, as of right now, that's kind of where I'm at. I think that either of those two are most likely going to be the date that we'll see for dates of filing for the June Visa Bulletin for India and EB2. So thank you to everyone, KKR, RRH, Lagar, Shirag, Adarsh, Way, Tony, Nice Hindi Songs, Vikrant, Divya, Wahid, and Nur. Thank you all for your questions and comments. I really appreciate you all taking time here to join in this live stream today. I just wanted to remind you, look for the H1B Guy news this Saturday. I've been releasing that on a pretty regular Saturday cadence. And then Monday on May 2nd, the H1B Guy forecast June 2022 Visa Bulletin employment-based predictions. I also want to remind you that on May 11th at 3 p.m., I'm going to be having a live stream where I'm going to be hosting Arif Kamani from Mob Squad, and we're going to talk about their services and options that they provide for individuals who have some uncertain statuses here in the U.S., or if you're located outside of the U.S. and looking to get to North America. I also want to remind everyone that today's live stream is brought to you by our partners Syndesis and Path to Canada. They provide an ideal plan B for high skilled immigrants currently located in the U.S. whose status may be uncertain. If you're facing an H1B denial or OPT expiration, don't get caught off guard. Make sure you have a plan B, and Syndesis and Path to Canada are your answers. To find out if you qualify, please be sure to use the link in the video description below, and someone from Syndesis or Path to Canada will be in touch. And also by PERM-ads.com, the industry leader in providing a seamless experience for employers and immigration attorneys navigating the complex PERM recruitment ad phase of the labor certification process. If you're looking to reduce your costs and overhead associated with PERM labor certification recruitment advertising, let PERM-ads.com help you. And also by Mob Squad. Are you a technology professional facing U.S. work visa challenges? If your OPT visa is about to expire and you were not selected in the recent H1B lottery, our partner Mob Squad has a solution. They help technology professionals facing U.S. work visa uncertainty remain with their current U.S. company nearshore from Canada, as well as technology professionals from around the world who are seeking an opportunity to find a rewarding career in North America. Through their partnership with the Canadian government, they can obtain a Canadian work permit for you and your spouse in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Whether you're looking to stay working with your current U.S. company or you want to find a new opportunity in Canada, please find out how the team at Mob Squad can help you via the link in the description below. Join the squad. So ask you one last time to please like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, and click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we go live like we have here today on April 27th, 2022 at 2 p.m. Eastern. If you've made it this far, really appreciate you taking time to join my live stream and watching my video. I really appreciate your support. I'm Robert. I'm the H1B Guy, your global source for all things H1B.